There's this moment that catches everyone off guard. You're scrolling through your phone, looking at a message from an old friend, and something feels off. Not wrong exactly, just different. The jokes don't land the same way, the energy's weird, and you can't put your finger on when it started. Here's what probably happened. Somewhere between then and now, your life changed. Maybe you got that promotion. Maybe your business finally clicked. Maybe you just started making real money for the first time. And you thought, naively, that the people who knew you when you had nothing would be the most excited to see you win. But they're not. And that confusion, that pit in your stomach wondering if you did something wrong, that's what we need to talk about today. Because what's happening to you has a name. It's called the crab bucket mentality. And once you understand it, you'll stop blaming yourself and start seeing the pattern for what it really is, a predictable, almost mechanical response that has nothing to do with you being a bad person and everything to do with how human psychology works when success enters the equation. Let me paint you a picture. If you've ever seen a bucket of crabs at a seafood market, you've witnessed something fascinating and kind of brutal. When one crab tries to climb out, the others don't cheer it on. They don't help, they grab it and pull it back down. Not because crabs are evil, they're just crabs, but because if one escapes, it highlights that the others are still trapped. Your success works the same way. It's not that your friends are bad people, it's that your growth forces them to confront something they've been avoiding. The gap between where they are and where they could be. When you were all broke together, there was this unspoken comfort. Everyone's struggling, so no one's failing. You'd sit around complaining about rent, about dead-end jobs, about how the system's rigged. And in a weird way, that shared misery created connection. It was safe. But the second you break out of that, the second you stop complaining and start actually doing something about it, you've broken the social contract. Because now your success is evidence that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't the system. Maybe it was the choices. And that realization is terrifying for people who aren't ready to change. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Most people won't admit they're threatened by your success. They don't even know that's what's happening. Instead, it shows up in these subtle, almost invisible ways. Your friend congratulates you in the new car, but there's this tiny edge to it. Must be nice, they say, with a smile that doesn't quite reach their eyes. Or they start making jokes about you being too good for them now. And even though they're laughing, you can feel the weight behind it. Or maybe they just disappear. The texts get shorter, the invitations stop, and when you do see them, there's this weird tension in the room, like you're both pretending everything's normal when it clearly isn't. Here's what's actually going on beneath the surface. Psychologists have a term for this. It's called social comparison theory. Basically, we're wired to measure ourselves against the people around us. It's how we figure out if we're doing okay. And as long as everyone's at roughly the same level, the comparison feels neutral. But when you rise above the group, that comparison becomes painful. Because every time they see you, they're reminded of what they haven't done, the risks they didn't take, the discipline they didn't build, the excuses they kept making while you were grinding. And instead of using that discomfort as fuel to change their own lives, most people do something else. They find ways to bring you back down to their level. Not always consciously. Sometimes it's just little comments, little ways to downplay what you've achieved. Yeah, but you probably work all the time now, right? Or, money doesn't buy happiness, you know, as if you weren't aware, as if the second you got a raise, you forgot everything else that matters. The most painful version of this is when it comes from people you actually care about. Your best friend from high school, your college roommate, the person who was supposed to be there no matter what. Because these aren't random haters on the internet. These are people who know your story. They were there when you were sleeping on couches, eating ramen, wondering if you'd ever figure it out. And now that you have, they can't seem to be happy for you. That stings in a way that's hard to describe. So what do you do with this? First, you stop taking it personally. And I know that's easier said than done, but hear me out. This reaction, this pulling you back down, it's not about you. It's about them. It's about what your success triggered in their own psychology. You didn't do anything wrong by growing. You didn't betray anyone by getting your life together. You just became a mirror, and mirrors are uncomfortable when you don't like what you see. Second, you give people space. Not everyone's ready to grow at the same time. Some people need to sit with their discomfort for a while before they can be genuinely happy for you, and that's okay. You don't need to force the friendship. You don't need to convince them that you're still the same person. If they need distance to process, let them have it. The ones who are supposed to stay will come back. The ones who don't, they were never your people to begin with. Third, and this is the hardest one, you need to find new peers, people who are on a similar trajectory as you, people who understand what it takes to build something. Because here's the truth, you can't stay connected to people who need you to fail in order to feel okay about themselves. That's not friendship, that's codependency. And the longer you try to maintain those relationships, the more you'll start to resent both them and yourself. This doesn't mean you cut everyone off. It doesn't mean you become some cold, ruthless person who only cares about success, but it does mean you get honest about who actually supports your growth and who just tolerates it. There's a massive difference between someone who celebrates your wins and someone who gives you a half-hearted, good for you, and then changes the subject. Now, here's the part no one tells you. Outgrowing people is grief, real grief. Because you're not just losing the friendship, you're losing the version of yourself that existed in that friendship. The version of you that they knew, the version of you that felt safe and familiar. And there's something deeply sad about realizing that the people who knew you best might not be able to come with you where you're going. But here's what I need you to understand. Your success didn't ruin these friendships, it revealed them. The crab bucket was always there. You just didn't notice it until you tried to climb out. And the people pulling you back, they're not bad people. They're scared. Scared that if you can do it, maybe they could have too. And they didn't. That's not your burden to carry. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to succeed. You are allowed to outgrow the people who can't handle that. Because the right people, the real ones, they don't need you to stay small. They'll cheer for you as you climb. They'll ask how they can support you. They'll be inspired by your wins, not threatened by them. And those are the friendships worth protecting. So if you're in this weird in-between space right now, where you've leveled up but your circle hasn't, I want you to know something. You're not crazy, you're not ungrateful, you're not a bad friend. You're just experiencing one of the most predictable patterns in human psychology. The question isn't whether this will happen, the question is how you'll respond when it does. Will you shrink yourself to make others comfortable? Or will you keep climbing and trust that the right people will meet you at the top? I think you already know the answer.